We're live? Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to How Doctors Can Use Tech to Stand Apart from the Competition, a joint webinar from Neuroflow and SRL Group. My name is David Brooks, and I'm president of SRL Group. SRL Group stands for Stop Referral Leakage. We help physicians maximize word-of-mouth referrals by enhancing online reputation and through innovative software to recruit patients to become advocates for your practice. And I'm joined today by Andrew Kahn. Andrew?
Hi, I'm Andrew, Senior Product Specialist at Neuroflow. Neuroflow is a suite of tools that enables remote monitoring and behavioral health integration, really in all settings, including psychology, primary care, and even pain management settings.
Great. So here's what we're going to cover today in the next 35 to 40 minutes. First, what is an online reputation? And more importantly, why should you care? Second, why do some doctors, especially those who treat chronic conditions, seem to have significantly worse online reviews? Third, what are the underlying causes for poor online reviews? And finally, how you can take action to mitigate the impact of poor online reviews. So here's a sobering statistic. Everyone wants word of mouth, and everyone assumes that word of mouth is a slam dunk, but the reality is far different. In this hyper-digital, hyper-connected world, 3 out of 4 patients will actually Google a doctor before making an appointment after they receive a word-of-mouth recommendation. And here's another sobering fact. 37% of patients admitted they will avoid a doctor with negative reviews, even if those doctors had a word-of-mouth endorsement from a happy patient. So let's define some terms, because your online reputation is much more than your online reviews. Google's algorithm looks at your online reputation much the same way patients do. The sum total of everything about your practice online combined with everything else said about you online. It combines issues that, in their mind, indicates high credibility. Do you have a detailed biographical profile on your website and elsewhere? Is your name, address, and phone number consistent with on authoritative online directory websites? Are you featured prominently on relevant healthcare websites? Do those profiles look good? Do you have a rich, full-featured, mobile-friendly, secure website? Are there other websites that link to it? And most importantly, is there a single authenticated and carefully curated Google My Business listing for each physical location? Those are the positive factors. Now let's look at some of the factors that Google and patients consider things that undermine your online credibility. Do your online profiles look outdated and neglected? Do your addresses conflict with one another? Some old, some new? Do your phone numbers work? Is there any decent information about your medical credentials and accomplishments and affiliations? What do you look like today and not 25 years ago in a photo? And of course, bad reviews, old reviews, and sparse reviews. Some doctors say that they don't think reviews really matter, and sadly, they're technically correct, yet absolutely wrong. Several studies show no correlation between online reviews and quality of care. And as some of you know, star ratings catch flack for administrative and billing issues, even staff attitude, nothing at all related to quality of care or clinical outcomes. That's the technically correct part. But here's why you'd also be absolutely wrong. The reality is, sadly, 75% of patients use online consumer ratings as the sole determinant of whether or not to see a physician in consultation. So even if you think reviews are bunk, your patients do not and will not get the care they need simply because they see a bad review, your bad review. It gets worse. Review scores are highly skewed and have significant differences depending on medical specialties. Patients and doctors really don't understand this. Here's an example. A urologist with a 4.6 star rating is great, in the 80th percentile among his or her peers. A cardiothoracic surgeon with 4.6 stars is merely average, in the 50th percentile. And don't even get us started about the bias towards pain management docs. So this chart is from a study in the Journal of Medical Internet Research written by 4 researchers from Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. It shows patient satisfaction scores by specialty. And what's most surprising, there's a statistically significant difference in ratings based on medical specialty. Allied health professionals such as dental hygienists, dietitians, occupational and physical therapists have the highest mean overall satisfaction scores, about 4.5 stars, followed closely by surgeons. But notice who's got the worst online scores. Doctors that focus on chronic illnesses such as addiction, pain, and rheumatological diseases. So if you go to this website, comparemydoc.com, you'll see the extent of the issue. Pain management docs have a mean score of 3.7, roughly the 50th percentile of all physicians rated. This is compared to family practice, where a 3.7 star rating would put the doctor in the 36th percentile. Or a cardiac surgeon, where a 3.7 star score would be in the 13th percentile. If you email me after, I'll share the link to the study. So there's definitely a star rating bias against some doctors, maybe even you. If you have lousy reviews, here's part of the reason. Next, we'll discuss what you can do about it. So let's understand why people give lousy reviews in the first place. In market research, there's a concept called the Net Promoter Score, or NPS. Think about a consumer satisfaction survey that asks, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you recommend Dr. Smith to friends and family? A detractor is someone who's going to give you a score of anywhere from 0 to 6. They are not a fan. Someone passively scores you a 7 or 8. They like you, but not that much to go out of their way. Someone who scores you a 9 or a 10, that's a fan. A detractor at the low end of the scale, when they give you a 1 out of 10, can be sufficiently agitated and motivated to seek revenge with an online bad review. So what would cause someone to be this angry? It's probably more than rude office staff or a billing dispute or a personality conflict. Think about the deeply held frustration from a chronically ill patient that doesn't feel they're making progress, or doesn't feel the doctor cares, or is not engaged. Those are some of the reasons why patients lash out and give a doctor a bad review. So let's just say you got that bad review. Now what? Step 1, do not resist the temptation to contact your lawyer. This strategy almost is never effective and will only lead to making your lawyer a little bit wealthier. That's not to say you need to ignore it. First, you can and should dispute bad reviews if the review content violates the review publisher's terms of use. Does the review contain personally identifiable health information, inappropriate or threatening language, or a host of other serious content violations? Anecdotally, it is possible to get reviews taken down. About 1 in 10 Yelp reviews are successfully challenged due to terms of use violations. But this should not be your first line of defense. For the reviews that aren't obvious terms of use cases, you should respond quickly, within 24 hours if possible. Your tone should be non-confrontational and empathetic, because hundreds of potential patients are reading the review and your response. Your lack of response could be interpreted as a tacit admission of fault. But the best policy is to be proactive and make gathering of online reviews part of your normal business operations. Now, I know many doctors feel a bit squeamish about asking for reviews, but frankly, that's the wrong approach. You should instead be asking for feedback, not reviews. At checkout, train your staff to ask patients things like, could we have done anything more to serve you better today? Notice how you can defuse a ticking time bomb just with that simple face-to-face question. If all goes well, if there are no problems, or if the patient really feels happy and well cared for, then you can ask for the review. But ask, I'm glad you had a good experience. Would you mind leaving your feedback online? So it really helps if you have a tool that can make that happen immediately. And this is an example of a technology that we offer that is a SMS messaging service that lets patients leave reviews directly on Google, Healthgrades, or about 8 other consumer-focused review websites. But whatever tool you use, it's just important to get the patient to take action right then and there at the point of care. And now I'd like to turn the program over to Andrew, who's going to talk a little bit more about specific clinical tools that can enhance patient satisfaction and could even improve online scores. Andrew?
Thanks. So how do you engage with your patients? How do you track, monitor their improvement? These are all questions that you should really be thinking about as you're trying to really improve the relation with your patients. So when we look at it, we try to understand how can we reduce friction for patients and the providers. We don't want this to be extra work for you. Now, one of the ways that you can do this is that patients want perceived access 24/7. And without being on call and giving them your cell phone, this is really easily achievable. You want to allow and even encourage the patient to provide insight to the provider, which will then enable measurement-based care. And one of the nice things here is being able to incorporate the mental health and mindfulness elements into the treatment of chronic conditions. So what you're seeing here represents a typical example of a patient experience when the provider does not have engagement with or awareness to the patient after a visit. It's a single data point. The provider had no knowledge of the worsening of the patient, and how can we change that? It's something that's insightful that you want to know and you want to show that you care for your patients in between their appointments. The easiest way to do that is to remove access barriers and friction for your patients. So we want to get patients to interact with their providers. Let's make it easy. Remove those barriers, increase access, help the patients stay engaged and informed. And then when they come in, we want to acknowledge and allow the patient-reported outcomes to influence the clinical decisions, thus enhancing the care you're providing and the all-encompassing care that you provide. So now, with the insight and the appropriate interventions, including self-help resources, your patients will have improved outcomes and access to behavioral health tools and resources without an ER visit. So as you can see here, the patient had that single initial data point that we had before. But now, as you stayed in touch with them, using tools, technologies, and engaging with them and removing those barriers, you have a lot more touch points. And when you're able to see that a patient might be trending in the wrong direction, you're now able to intervene and suggest alternative tools or resources to keep them out of the emergency room and strengthening your relationship with the patient. At Neuroflow, we use a tool that's called Neuroflow is an online platform that aids in the delivery of measurement-based care and behavioral health resources, tools, and techniques that improve outcomes, strengthens the undeniable mind-body connection, and is supported by several reimbursable CPT codes. When Dr. Landrum, one of our pain clients, deployed Neuroflow, the patients reported higher satisfaction and better outcomes, largely due to being connected with their care team and the tools provided in between their appointments. If you think about it, it's really amazing how few providers are taking advantage of technology, which is equally frustrating and shocking, as patients can largely provide the data for the care team with little to no extra work from the staff. This patient-generated data guides clinical decisions to improve outcomes and their satisfaction.
So before we open it up to questions, let's kind of review what we've covered today. The first is it's very important that you take active control of your online reputation, cultivate a positive story. Apps like Neuroflow can offer you a great patient engagement tool that can help to bridge some of the gaps that patients feel, especially if they're very frustrated with the lack of progress on chronic illness. You should always try to seek feedback first to diffuse any kind of resentment or problems that might manifest itself with a bad online review. And your online reputation is really directly related to the health of your business. It's not something that you can just decide to turn your back on. People are already making decisions. So the best thing that you can do is to take active control of your online reputation. I'd like, just as an action step for everyone in the audience, to maybe take a look and Google your actual business and make sure that you've claimed and verified your Google My Business page. And if you want to take maybe get extra credit, look at claiming other popular healthcare websites that publish patient reviews, things like Doximity or CareDash or even WebMD. Okay, so let's open it up to some questions now. You can use the chat window on the right side of your screen. And you can also, after the webinar, get in touch with either Andrew or myself at these contact both our email addresses and my phone number's there. I'm not sure why Andrew didn't put his phone number on there, but anyway, so I have a question. Someone sent us on Twitter. What is the most important review site? Gosh, assuming that we're talking about doctors, my professional opinion is probably Google is the most important. That's usually the first entry point for most patients. The way I like to think about it is there's branded search and there's non-branded search. So branded search is I'm looking for a pain management doctor in Center City, Philadelphia. And that's going to be just a land grab of anyone who is targeting those keywords for patients. But if I want to specifically check out the online reputation of Dr. Andrew Kahn, I got to make sure that every listing, everything on page 1 of Google looks great. And the most prominent search result for a named-based or brand name search for a doctor is the Google Knowledge Panel that has access to the most recent reviews. So I think if you're trying to win over a patient, that those 3 out of 4 patients that are Googling you before they actually call you, making sure that your Google reviews are within that you have a number of reviews, at least 20 good reviews, and a star rating that is commensurate with your medical specialty. So if you're a pain management doc, we've discussed the bias that you already have. You want to make sure that you have higher than that 3.7 star rating that people seem to just automatically give to pain management docs. If you're a heart surgeon, you really got to work on making sure that you're 4.8 or higher. If you're a heart surgeon and you have 100 reviews and an average rating of 4.0, you're actually in the lower percentile, probably below 50 percentile, and you might have a bigger problem.
Great. And I think we have a question here from Jeff. He asked, are patients willing to share this information? It's a great question. Sometimes patients feel, I don't want to give that to you. But ultimately, it's a lot of the messaging. When the provider, the care team, the front desk, support staff say, patients, we care about you. We want to know how you're doing in between appointments. This is not a one and done. This is not a you can only talk to us when you're here. We genuinely care. We want you to get better. And the way for us to do that is to give you tools and resources for you to engage with us. Yes, they are willing to do this. In fact, it's overwhelming to see how much they are willing to do that. Of our own internal studies at Neuroflow, we're seeing that our engaged patients are doing this about 40 activities a month. They use their Neuroflow tools to log in and give information, whether it's their mood, their sleep, their pain scale, do a journaling event. A lot of our providers ask patients to say, hey, how are you feeling now? How did the intervention work? Are you doing anything that makes it better or worse? And again, 40 activities a month. So more than once a day, they're doing individual activities. Neuroflow does a couple of unique things to encourage them to stay engaged and want to share this information, whether it be earning badges and feats, accomplishments along the way, to earning points that they can redeem for rewards down there in our marketplace for them. There's also the element of when the provider acknowledges what the patient's done. So there's a lot of messaging behind this. When your provider says, patient, thank you for doing what I asked. Thank you for sharing how you were feeling in between our appointments. It not only does it provide that clinical insight to guide the treatment of how you're interacting with the patient, but it lets the patient know they're validated and cared for. And they're more inclined to not only give that information, but go online and leave those phenomenal reviews that this doctor genuinely cares about me. He wasn't rushed in and out in the 10, 15-minute window that is very typical these days now.
So I have a question. What's the sweet spot for your medical specialties that Neuroflow covers?
It's a tough question.
Yeah, it's not just, say, pain management, but you cover a gamut of different specialties, correct?
Correct. Our pain providers have found a tremendous use in this because there is such a strong mind-body connection. And as you can imagine, when you're in chronic discomfort, it does pull you down and weighs on you emotionally. But we have clients that are in OB, are in pediatrics, or in primary care, we have psychologists, social workers, really just across the entire spectrum that want to stay in touch with their patient.
Yeah.
If you think back to that initial, one of the slides I showed, that first one, where a typical patient experience is hi, welcome, new patient, fill out a immense amount of paperwork and forms. And somewhere hidden in there is about 7 or 8, 9 questions about mental well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be the only time that provider really learns about them in a data measurement-based way. And that's where they sit. So when any provider, any specialty is now able to see how a patient is progressing and trending and how they're responding to the treatment, it may not even be related to that specialty. Your rheumatologist, as you showed, has concerns over their online reputation. That rheumatologist, if they're able to say, hey, patient, I do care about you. I know this is uncomfortable for you. I want to see how you're doing on a more regular basis. It, again, shows that connectivity.
I really think that there is a strong correlation between a patient who feels the doctor is listening and cares versus the patient that feels the doctor is aloof. So there's a question, I guess this was emailed. I'm not quite sure if this is from Amanda. Should I try to put a positive reviews on my website? Absolutely. So a lot of times we've seen doctors who will put up basically testimonials, and usually it's the first initial and the last name, or the first name and the last initial, some anonymized thing. There's no date on it, no context. And I think a lot of people look at these and go, this is, is this even a real patient? Increasingly, there are technologies. We use a technology that harvests the latest reviews and then curates those reviews to, frankly, just to cherry pick only the best reviews. We will go out and find the most recent reviews, cite the source, the date, and whatever information is on those review sites. So if it's on Health Grades, if it's on RateMDs, if it's on Google, we can harvest those things and then put them on your website with a very simple one piece of little code that takes about 5 minutes to set up. And that helps two ways. It helps improve your search visibility because Google detects, there's new content that's on the site. So your website gets a little bit of boost from organic SEO. It also establishes a lot more credibility with patients who are checking you out. So patients will Google your name, they'll check that, and then they're going to click in and look at your website, look at your credentials. So if they see current up-to-date reviews published by an independent third party, they're more likely to think that, okay, this doctor really is a great provider. If they see a lot of old anonymous testimonials, I think they're going to be a little more skeptical.
And I'm looking at the questions here. Zane, you asked about our engagement. If patients are utilizing Neuroflow, we found, again, astounding numbers here. We have a 73% engagement rate after month 1. So month 1, honestly, let's say every single patient gets enrolled after the first month. They tend to have a little bit of a drop off. They're not positively encouraged or not feeling connected to it. But after month 1, we have 73% of patients that were initially introduced to it remain engaged, and that relatively plateaus going on month after month. And then those engaged, at 73% engaged, are the ones that are completing about 40 activities every single month on there. Similar follow-up question. Dr. David, you had asked about some of the activities or templates that are baked within Neuroflow, if there's ways to seek feedback. Yes, there are certainly ways to seek feedback from your patients. Neuroflow is of the belief that it should be more clinically natured, inclined to work with them to seek feedback, how they're progressing, how they're feeling, doing journaling, pain entries, more on that clinical side. Some of the stuff that David works on of getting more of that public presentation, it would require probably an extra step to get the patient delivering that information through Neuroflow and then delivering it onto an online review or platform. And it's probably best to divide their public boasting or appreciation for your practice from the clinical information they're trying to share with their care team.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fine line between what you're going to share privately with your doctor versus what you want to share with the general public. But I think there's a lot of the fact that patients who are chronically ill, who are not making progress, are in a little bit of despair. And sometimes there is that the feeling that they want to lash out. And you can see that just by the inherent bias in the different types of medical specialties. A heroic doctor that saves a patient's life, they're of course going to get great reviews. But someone who is on, who's got a long-term kind of pain that just does not seem to be making progress, those are the ones that you need extra tools to support them. And this is a good example of that.
And there's actually an interesting crossover, David. Is our clients or their patients download Neuroflow from their respective app stores. and we actually have a tremendous amount of reviews on those app stores where patients attribute the invitation and the usage of Neuroflow to their provider. So not only is it good for us at Neuroflow to have patients publicly putting their name attached to a tool that's largely associated with mental wellness, but they're also attributing it, saying, I'm so appreciative that my doctor gave me this tool. It's really helped me. It's a tremendous asset. So it's a great marketing element for our clients to be able to share that, hey, we took on a unique approach and incorporated technology to stay in touch with our patient. Check out what our patients have said.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. So thank you everyone for participating. If you'd like more information, contact Andrew at neuroflowsolution.com or send an email to me at info@srlgroup.co, not .com, but .co. Thanks very much. We'll probably have another webinar in about 1 month time.